Hey guys, you're watching Daniel and Gian React, and today we're going to check out Hollywood needs to stop glorifying Winston Churchill. We have seen this comment in our on our videos before.
Numerous times.
And now we get to watch a video about it. Did somebody recommend this video?
No, I mean, there's a few people, no one specifically, but like a few people definitely did, because I guess this video was released the other day and it's like trending now. So, I mean, I just want to start off, before we get into it, start off by saying...
You don't know much about Winston Churchill?
No one cares about Winston Churchill here in this country.
No, well...
But we'll get into the discussion after, but I think there's a misconception about how prominent Winston Churchill is in this nation.
Got it.
And we'll get into that.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
Before we get started, just want to let you guys know, still haven't got permission for pictures for YouTube. If you want to watch our full reaction videos,
Facebook
with the screen, go on our Facebook page. That's Daniel and Gian Talk.
Yeah, so
on Facebook.
I mean, I guess we could talk about
description.
that. Guess people don't really like the time code thing. Just to be completely honest, we do that for you guys. We're doing that just mainly to bridge the gap between when we actually upload it and when they approve it.
We said we're going to release it this weekend.
So we did.
We did.
But to be honest with you, we haven't received anything. And there's not a lot of channels that have episodes 4 and 5, their reaction videos up. So I'm actually curious to know if maybe they're not granting permission for these episodes.
Because they don't want people watching it on YouTube.
They want to go. Yeah. They want them to go to the TBF app.
Yeah.
And if that's the case,
there's nothing we can do about it.
Not a thing.
They usually get to us within 24 hours. They haven't responded at all. It's been 3-4 days now.
4 days, yeah.
So, best bet, go on Facebook.
Hi. My name is Andre Borges, and I'm here to talk about something that not many people outside of India actually understand. The glorification of Winston Churchill and how
he addresses
that's a problem.
Your question.
I'm going to cut right to the chase. He was an evil, racist man who brought about the death of millions of Indians. And the way recent Hollywood movies are portraying him as this big hero is kind of insulting. The Darkest Hour, a film that won Gary Oldman his first Oscar for an undoubtedly amazing performance as the British Prime Minister, has garnered praise for Oldman's performance, the film in general, but also for its historical accuracy. Now, history books in America, Australia, Europe, and other Western countries portray him as a grand hero of World War II who propelled the Allied powers to victory. Yeah, of course, the death of 3 million Indians was, well, left out of the film. See, what the history books of Firangs don't tell you is what ours taught us. It isn't just the Darkest Hour. Indians' involvement in a lot of efforts during World War II was left out of a lot of Hollywood productions. Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk, Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds.
Oh, come on. You can't go after Inglourious Basterds. Fuck off, BuzzFeed.
There have been dozens of Hollywood films dramatizing Churchill's role in World War II,
but
none
throw Saving Private
upon
Ryan in there
one of his darkest actions, the Bengal famine. So, I'm going to tell you about it. The people of Bengal, as with many other states in India, depended on grain crops like wheat and rice for their livelihood. However, in late 1942, a huge cyclone hit the area, destroying a large amount of crop yield and leaving the surviving crops infested with fungus. Thus began a time of massive starvation and famine across Bengal. This leads up to 1943, a time in which 3 to 4 million Indians died in one of the worst massacres the world has ever seen. Now, what's come to be popularly known as the Bengal famine was actually a direct result of Churchill's executive decision and effort on the part of the Allied faction. India during the time of World War II was still under British rule, so Churchill, having full control of India's resources, did what the British do best. They used us. He ordered the diversion of food supplies from already starving Indians to already well-supplied British soldiers in Europe. So, instead of giving the starving Indians some relief and providing them with more amounts of grain, he did just the opposite. Massive amounts of food stockpiles were taken out of the hands of ill and dying Indians. And Churchill's only response to the Delhi government's exclamation that Indians are dying in the streets was an alleged telegraph asking that if the famine was so bad, then why is Gandhi still alive? The famine brought about death and suffering like no one had ever seen before. People died of starvation, people died of diseases. First-hand accounts explain that the streets were littered with the bodies of the dead because the living were too weak to pick up the bodies, bury or cremate them. Parents drowned their children to save them from a slow, agonizing death, and still others took their own lives to find relief. All this because of a man who's revered as a brilliant figure in history. In 2011, writer and journalist Madhushree Mukherjee released a book called Churchill's Secret War. Now, through the book, Mukherjee explains that she went through a lot of footnotes, a lot of historical texts, she met with historians, and she got to the bottom of previously unknown facts.
When I started to study the famine, I read for at least 2 years just to catch up on Indian colonial history, the process of wealth extraction that the British imposed on India. And only after that did I try to start reading about the Bengal famine, which at the time I started working on it was already the most studied famine in the world, I believe. I did not expect that I would find anything new to say about it. But as I kept reading, I kept having these questions in my mind. Why was no relief sent? And I asked a couple of historians, experts, one of whom said that was the wrong question to ask. I should look at only local factors to understand the famine, which is exactly what historians and anthropologists had done thus far. At which point I decided that I would go to the United Kingdom's archives and take a look at the Ministry of Shipping files and the Ministry of Food files, at the war files, things that historians of India don't usually look at. It was obvious to me from my reading that the files on the Bengal famine at the Indian office had been purged. But when I went to the Ministry of Shipping archives in the United Kingdom, I was astonished to find that there were 3 war cabinet discussions on sending food to Bengal in 1943. And in all 3 of these, the decisions were very negative for India. And the first of these, while famine was raging, no food was scheduled at all. And I feel I found something like a smoking gun for saying that Churchill was directly responsible for at least the lack of relief during the Bengal famine.
And the main point of the book supports the claim that Churchill's decision directly led to the death and famine that plagued Bengal. Mukherjee explains in the book that even before the famine started, Churchill's policies may have directly contributed towards it. See, what happened was, in 1942, Japan took hold of Bengal's next-door neighbor, Burma. To stave off the impending Japanese invasion, British forces took charge of the region and evicted thousands of farmers and cutting off a large part of Bengal's food supply, which was obtained through trade with Burma. Now think about this. Even though the famine was rapidly spreading across the region, India exported 70,000 tons of rice for British forces in Europe. Sir Archibald Wavell and the Secretary of State for India, Leopold Emery, requested food to be sent back to India to relieve the starving people. Countries like the United States, Canada, and others offered to help, but Churchill denied it. See, images of news and famine never made its way to the rest of the world. Hell, even the people of Britain didn't know about it. By 1943, it was estimated that to survive, India needed about 1 million tons of grain. In 1944, Churchill shipped about 350,000 tons to India.
So there were 2 factors behind Churchill's denying food to India. First, he wanted to use the surplus food, that wheat that was in Australia, not to feed Indians, whom he hated anyway, and I'll get to that, but to store for future use in Europe. Second, he hated Indians at this point. In fact, he even says that at one point in 1944 that he wished Indians didn't breed so fast because that kept them from the doom that they deserved, which was extermination. In Hollywood, he is celebrated as a war leader. And this imperial side of him, you hardly see that at all.
It was only during the harvest of December 1944 that the famine completely ended. After an upper estimate of 4 million people lost their lives. Look, it's no secret that the British committed crimes against their then colonies that we're still 70 years later still recovering from. But now, to glorify through world cinema the men responsible for destroying several nations is not only adding insult to injury, it should be considered a whole new crime in itself. It makes light of the history suffered by 1/7 of the world's population. But then again, rewriting history to make themselves look better isn't something the British haven't done before.
Well, first and foremost, guys, I just want to throw this out there.
I haven't seen the movie. That's a big thing.
I haven't seen the Winston Churchill movie that came out, was Hour of Darkness or whatever it's called. There's a lot of movies I have on my queue that are ahead in priority list for seeing that movie. It's you know, it's one of those if I'm on a long flight and it's in the
You might
I
think about
might
it.
think about watching.
There's
it.
literally nothing else to watch.
You know, but it's kind of like the King's Speech was one that I think I watched because somebody had a screener around and I had time to kill. I think my wife wanted to watch it actually, so it was one of those. Winston Churchill for me, I don't think he's really. People don't look at him as an enemy here in the States, but he's definitely. There's no statues or any monuments that I know of like dedicated to him. Maybe in New York, but in California, he's not. He's not a part of our history here in California. Like we don't even really. If we talk about World War II, it's more about the Nazis and the Holocaust.
I mean, I can give you. I paid attention. History was one of my favorite subjects going through school, whether it was in middle school, high school, college, whatever. And Churchill only got brought up to. Okay, yeah, he was one of the the controlling forces and helped during the Battle of Britain and during the siege of England and all this stuff. The bombing of London and all that. But he was just that other part of the Allied forces who met with Franklin FDR. He was in those pictures. It was never.
I mean, according to our textbooks, the U.S. saved everybody.
Exactly. But let's take. The reason why I bring
and
this
he's got
up,
some awesome quotes. That's the other thing.
The reason why I bring this up is because the video says Hollywood needs to stop glorifying Winston Churchill. Right? Now, the video didn't go into detail about the fucking topic of the video. There is no real. Hollywood made one movie, and because it was critically received because of Gary Oldman's performance.
And recently.
That's glorifying Winston Churchill. The movies that they mentioned, they were angry because there was no Indian representation. That's not glorifying Winston Churchill. It's not.
No.
That's a This is a BuzzFeed thing where they want to fucking have clickbait titles about hot button issues that people really care about and mislead you to educate you about other things.
I mean, Inglourious Bastards was a total fiction. Like all the things that happened in it were almost completely made up.
100%. I mean, it fucking Hitler dies in the movie.
There was no.
So to use that as a.
There was no Ugo Stiglitz.
So to use that as an example of glorifying Winston or whatever.
Yeah, that's
a huge stretch. Dunkirk, I get because that's a big part of history.
Yeah,
that's a big thing. But
Dunkirk's another one of those things where I had no idea what Dunkirk was until that movie came out. Especially because it was a battle they didn't win, so to make a movie about it was kind of interesting.
And so the thing is, my thing is just there's little things like that. And then there's misdirects where I was actually invested in what they were talking about, learning stuff, but then they say, well, the English were well fed. Okay, well, if you're going to go and show us details, prove to me in this video that they are well fed. Show me documents. Show me manuscripts. Show me the supplies that they were well fed. That's just them saying that. I'm not saying that it's wrong. It sounds like I'm being defensive.
Well,
this is me reacting to the video.
I totally believe that Winston Churchill said prioritizing the British soldiers over
the Indian
people.
Especially because it was during the war, and even to him, saving his people was a million times more important, I'm sure, than it was saving the lives of Indians who were starving, who weren't actually fighting during the war.
I mean, we are products of colonialism. I would not exist if it wasn't for colonialism. Neither would Daniel. That's just kind of.
So I'm not glorifying.
I feel your pain.
I'm not defending him. I'm just saying the video is supposed to be about Hollywood glorifying Winston Churchill.
Yeah, I know that the
title's not about that.
Absolutely misleading because I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of World War II movies that Winston Churchill plays a major factor in, because all the ones that Hollywood makes are from the American perspective. It's about Normandy. It's about D-Day.
You know why they use? Sorry, go ahead.
It's about the Great Escape. Things like that. It's not.
Winston Churchill. It's never. It's always about the action. It's always about the drama. It's almost hardly ever about behind the lines in the office with the president. You never see. Those are not World War II movies that I grew up on. In terms of the movies that were older than that, the Red One, like you mentioned.
I mean, there's MacArthur, and that takes place in Northern Africa.
But it's about a man.
Or is it Patton?
Patton.
Which one?
Patton is the one that Francis Ford Coppola wrote and won the Academy Award for.
Okay, MacArthur's the older one that's
yeah, and the Battle of the
Douglas
Bulge.
MacArthur's another one.
I mean, there's movies that. Meryl's Marauder, there's movies that it's about the heroes. It's about the the heroes, quote unquote, in these conflicts.
Casablanca.
Flags of Our Father, which is kind of not really that, but Letters from Iwo Jima. My point, you know what?
The River Kwai.
There you go. It's not behind really so much behind the lines. Maybe you can make an argument Lawrence of Arabia is kind of about behind, because it's another story about one man. But Inglourious Bastards was brought up because of the one fucking scene with Winston Churchill.
Right.
Where he's smoking a cigar in the corner of the room.
Yeah, he's not even the focal point of that scene.
Yeah, what did
Mike Myers with his prosthetics
how is that glorifying? Because he's there?
Yeah.
that means it's glorifying. I mean, let's also take another.
Sending an Englishman to pretend to be a German into Germany or Switzerland, wherever the hell they were at.
Yeah,
like it was.
Let's take another step back, okay? I need to watch the movie to know what they illustrated and what their point was for The Darkest Hour and what the movie was about. You know, I don't know what it was about, but let's just say it was a 90-minute movie about the Battle of Britain and it takes place in 90 minutes. Then there should be no reason to talk about the famine. There should be no reason to talk about any of that stuff.
I feel like he starts it off with representation where, you know, I didn't know that Indian soldiers were such a major part of World War I and World War II. I had no, until I went to the Arc de Triomphe in Paris and went up and saw the uniforms, I had no idea that there was Indian soldiers in World War I.
And that's a valid thing too.
And there's stuff like that. And we talk about on this channel, we talk about representation all the time. It's a major topic of many of our podcasts. And I'm completely with that. I think it's
100%.
unfair to only show
100%.
the white faces that were part of any of these things, especially when other, like for example, where I'm from, Puerto Rico in the Vietnam War, nobody that talks about this. There was more Puerto Rican casualties than there were per capita than there were anybody else's in that war. So this tiny little island supplied more soldiers than anyone else did and died fighting for a country that colonized them. And nobody talks about that.
No,
you know, there's one movie like that was made in Puerto Rico that's about that topic. But
never here in the States. But I guess my thing is, you know, it's kind of piggybacking off what you just said, right? You know, representation. But if the movie's not, if it doesn't create an opportunity for that to exist, how can you really fault the filmmakers for not? Like,
it's
for
like
example,
they mentioned the King's Speech. Like, what is the King's Speech about? You know,
speech impediment.
Right. Why would we need to see Indian soldiers or soldiers? Any soldiers? I don't remember seeing any soldiers at all in the King's Speech.
No, I don't. But I have an example. Okay.
But I'm saying that's what I'm getting at. It's the same thing. Like, if this movie is about Churchill in his, if it's 3 hours of him in his office deliberating, you know. Where are you going to squeeze that in? Where are you going to squeeze that in?
And if you do, how does it relate to the story? Yeah. You know, because Downfall, the Hitler movie, I've mentioned this movie numerous times on this show, and the movie's about the last few days in his bunker. Not once did it mention the Holocaust. Not once did it mention all the atrocities that he did. It was about literally the last few days in his bunker.
Yeah.
No one is talking about glorifying Hitler in that movie. People were upset that they made him a not a likable character, but someone that you could sympathetic, right? But that doesn't mean that it's not real, you know. Again, it comes down to the title of this movie. You know, this video, if it was Why Winston Churchill is an Asshole, you know, it would at least be, it would show that.
No,
right?
Absolutely.
And there, like I said, it comes down to clickbait, and it's using a real life shitty situation, because I don't feel like all the time BuzzFeed genuinely gives a fuck about what they talk about. I think they know that at the root that this is what people care about genuinely, and so they're gonna say, let's give them a history lesson, a brief overview, a simple fucking video that you can go viral with, that can spread a message that, you know, like me, I now saw it, right? And now I can go look into it, but it's misleading. It's throwing people under the bus. It's not the content of the video that's bad. It's the title that's bad. Because you can't really make an argument that Hollywood is glorifying Winston. Needs to stop means that they've been doing it.
I mean, I'm not as triggered by the video, but
I just want to present a conversation here where
I think people need to be a little more. I mean, this is just an example of the media, of the modern media that we're in all over the world now, where everyone's more worried about getting views than they are about content. And this is just another example of it. You know, getting people riled up. Like, this is something where I could share it on Facebook and everyone would get upset without even watching the video.
Just by the title.
And it would start fights.
Just from the title.
Just from the title.
And if they watch the video, they'd find out that the video has nothing to do with the title. And again, it's just my issue with, you know, I don't feel attacked. I don't feel like defensive of Winston. I don't give a fuck about Winston Churchill. I don't. To me, he's a drunk. That's how I know him historically. That's how I learned about him. He was drunk during most of these meetings, these decisions. But, you know, to go after, I need to see the movie.
To me, he drinks a lot of tea and has bad teeth because he's from England.
That's probably factual.
And ate a lot of bad food with no flavor.
Because if the movie, we touched about this already, and I'm gonna finish with this. If the movie presents opportunities in which they could have been incorporated, then shame on them. It's like Dunkirk. Because when I read about the Indian thing and the forces that were literally missing from Dunkirk and how pivotal they were, their exclusion actually kind of changed my perspective on the movie a little bit, because it was like, okay, that's a valid criticism,
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan. Like, you genuinely wrote them out. That's a valid criticism. But if we already said, if the Churchill movie's about him deliberating, certain battle plans or whatever, and it can't be, you're gonna have it be a one-line thing just so you could be historic. I mean, you could.
What if the whole movie is about him, like really struggling over keeping food away from India or not?
And then I come off as the biggest asshole. Yeah. Then I will completely.
But the movie does paint him in a positive way, like
exactly like this.
We really need this food, but I know that people are dying there in India, and I want to save them, but I can't because the soldiers need it, because the Germans are going to take over the planet.
If that's what it is, I will eat my own shoe.
Winston Churchill with a terrible Cockney accent for you guys.
But anyway, BuzzFeed videos kind of triggered me.
India, are you taking the piss out of me right now with this video?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. I guess I probably got a little triggered, but not because of the representation.
I get it, completely valid,
and let me know why I'm wrong. Have a conversation with me. I know I'm gonna get attacked, and people are gonna tell me I'm stupid and all that shit. And you should attack
all that
me.
stuff.
But also
he is stupid.
Let's have a discussion about this shit. Think about instead of like automatically getting angry about what I'm saying. Think about what I'm saying. Tell me why I'm actually wrong, or maybe it can open another channel of thinking. Because I genuinely feel like there was definitely some misleading things in here that could have easily been clarified. It's just because they blame.
Well, I think
the video.
I'm interested in reading that book.
Exactly, I was about to say that. I need to read the book because I want to know, because the video didn't explain what he did specifically that caused the famine. I mean, them to die. Right?
Well,
they said the smoking gun.
That was a bit misleading as well. Like, a typhoon or something came through and ruined all the crops, and fungus started growing on the crops that survived. Winston Churchill didn't.
He didn't send
unless he had one of these fucking
the DARPA.
He had an Infinity Stone, to cause a storm. Like, you can't. What he did contribute to the
deaths of 3 to 4 million people without a shot of a doubt.
Not sending
without
food, or by taking food that was grown there in the first place. Because it's kind of counterintuitive to take the food, send it to England, and then bring it back.
Right.
That's
so you could have just left it there in the
first
place.
Exactly. That's a bit.
So again, it's we're not arguing for Churchill. We're just saying, hey, this video could have been better. It could have really slam dunked the points where you could have no debate.
And I also think that history kind of corrects itself over the years. Like, the longer we're on this earth, the more we start finding out terrible things about all of our famous.
This video exists now. So if you type in Winston Churchill, since this video is trending, it will be tagged next to Darkest Hour or whatever that movie's called.
Yeah.
And you might be able to watch it back to back. I'm not saying the video is bad. It's just BuzzFeed sometimes just they do simplistic investigation. I feel like
BuzzFeed?
This is a BuzzFeed video, yeah.
Oh,
BuzzFeed India. That's why I'm like kind of triggered by it.
I thought you were just like, oh, this seems like a BuzzFeed video. So
no, it is a BuzzFeed video,
and that's calling it BuzzFeed.
No, that's the whole point.
I thought dialogue was their own thing this whole time.
No, it's BuzzFeed.
Oh, it says it right there, BuzzFeed India.
And so it's again, I'm gonna stop talking now, but
yes,
but yeah, so
yeah. That's gonna do it for us.
Hopefully you enjoyed this rant.
Thanks for watching. The drill. Smash that like button. Let us know what you think, please. Let's discuss this. TVF Pictures on Facebook. Check it out. We will see you next time.